started out with the exact same stuff about starting out with a link on the disad and thinking your cards were pretty good because I read those first and I was like, ooh, not bad. But then they just had so many cards that, you know, just that enough that it would be controversial and that it would end up draining political capital and that it was more specific than the Gates evidence. And I don't think that negative cards make this delay argument very explicitly at all, but I think you needed to address that a little bit more specifically as well, because the implication of that is that I don't know that it literally gets pushed off the docket or whatever, because the cards don't really say that, but it means that if there is controversy, it doesn't have to be like a net negative in the Congress. So even if I think your bipartisanship card is pretty good, although they've read so many cards that it drains political capital, that it's enough that there's a big fight that causes some problems. So, you know, massive impacts to this politics disad, and I've seen a strange number of debates that have happened this way this year so far, and I think it's just because people's impacts are so huge and people are spending more time on the case, which I think is kind of neat after, you know, years of just watching like states counterplan debates or whatever. But I still think you want like a little bit more defense on politics, extend a little bit wider variety of stuff, and I think had you had like a case impact and you tried to say how that case impact was turning politics, that would have helped you as well. Because you know, like once all those impacts were conceded, I really didn't have to do, I mean, I think the reason why I probably maybe took less time was just that I felt like I didn't have to do a whole lot of work, because I thought if they really won like even a little bit of defense, like I didn't think they had to really even necessarily be ahead on the case with it, as long as they won some defense, just given that I thought that all these extinction turn case arguments were kind of conceded and you didn't really even have analytical arguments fighting against that. At the same time though, I agree, I thought that your cards about how these movements are utterly, totally implacable and they're not going to be satisfied no matter what were good. But that when I thought that their evidence was a little bit better, that when push comes to shove between the government and those people, that the government will end up prioritizing security concerns, and that they're just real serious reliance on the United States for all sorts of things means that they won't actually kick us out. It'll just be an ongoing irritant. And I thought the counterplay insolvency about that, about how it could be sort of reduced in scope, I agreed with you that I don't think that I don't think there's a circumstance where the people of Okinawa are going to be happy with like being paid or whatever. It just sounds like these people are totally furious. But that it might be enough to reduce the size of the issue between the United States and Japanese governments so that it becomes kind of manageable. So, more defense in politics, reasons why politics drains the case. And I thought that the 2AR was good. I liked it. But 2AC, I had a little trouble understanding you. I would say every fifth tag, I wasn't totally sure what I was writing down. Like I got down some words, but it wasn't like a coherent argument. It was better than when I tried to scout you during the semi, but just a little more clarity work I think would be very beneficial. I thought the 1AR was excellent. And so overall, it was a very good debate.
What could I have done better? I think like what could should I have kicked another advantage?
Yeah. Make the debate a little smaller.
Okay.
I think it's relative to so that you can have some impact focus.
Like the only reason I didn't feel like
more time
we should have kicked that advantage, the BMD advantage, was more just that I felt that like, well then the counter plan would be able to do what I guess like what you just said, be able to make the mitigate the impact enough so that like I don't know like.
Well, that I don't know. I haven't looked at your evidence about this, but
Sure.
It seems like their determination to make up that deficit gap. Do you really have good cards that the money would be reallocated to BMD, or do you just have BMD can't be funded because they're afraid of those deficits? Like, do you have the reverse causal claim for that advantage?
Like they would Japan would devote the money to BMD
as opposed to covering deficits?
Well, I mean the card is from '98, like Miles pointed out, but I mean like it does say it would reallocate the money to BMD, but if they have a card, I guess that says that Japan wants to fund other things. It's probably later. The immediate card says that Japan wants to fund BMD. That's all I need.
Yeah, so just based on just that argument, I don't know that you had a huge risk of that advantage anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the substance issue is exactly the same way. I mean, like, very high risk of politics, obviously. And I do think that one of the things that I thought was really good, kind of on both sides of the debate, is despite the fact that this, was fairly huge in terms of the number of cards and everything, I thought everybody was good about saying, like, here are some of these key internal link questions. I thought one of the things that y'all could have done a little more of is, especially after the 2NC, when he's making a bunch of these distinctions on the public and, pointing out some of these warrants in, a couple of the evidence about why we won't get kicked out. I mean, the one card says, the public's going to mobilize and they might make noise, but they won't change policy. And the one about the election, that basically says, regardless of who's in power, here's how they're. And so I thought it was kind of interesting that, in the 1AR and 2AR, y'all were a little repetitive on, hey, we have this litany of kind of internal link questions, and they were kind of calling out the kind of core issue of that internal link question. And the other thing, too, I thought that was kind of interesting was that as I was reading some of the evidence, I thought y'all were a little kind of under-highlighted on some of that mobilization evidence versus, like, sort of theirs or whatever. And that may be an instance of where, there's just a little too much in the first affirmative, and it might be nice, especially on, like, a good example, I think, is, like, the McCormick evidence, right? It seems like the parts that you read don't tell all the warrants that, like, you're carving out as the debate progresses, right? If, the green part, only gives you that sort of, like, initial, and then, a bunch of the sort of nuanced arguments that come out in kind of like the 1AR and the 2AR about that evidence, relative to the counterplan or relative to kick-out, right? That's in parts of the card that's not read in the 1AC anymore, right? It may have been underlined at one point, but now it's no longer highlighted in those things. And, that may just be a creature of, the evolution of a 1AC. You add a couple of things, so you make little things, and you're so, you have all those warrants down, but those warrants aren't coming out in the evidence. And so, I thought there were a couple of those kind of like key kind of nexus points where, and I also thought, there was a little too much time spent on, trying to use realism to get out of some things and everything when the economy is, very separate from that. And I thought that was like time that, could have been spent, more on politics or whatever, or, kind of an advantage, even earlier, maybe you kick out of something in the 2AC, gives you more time, especially when, the 1AR, you gotta go after the impact overview and the terms case, that sort of thing. I mean, I think that has to be something that just gets a little bit of attention, so.
Wait, did you think I shouldn't have put the realism thing on? Or is it like just?
I mean, it's fine. It's like a you hope they drop it thing or whatever. Like, it's okay that you extended it. I thought it was way too much time in the 2 and 1. Like, you were just too happy about that argument or something.
Yeah, I just thought it was.
Yeah, you were too happy about it too, though, right?
I mean, we had like a democracy.
Yeah, but
impact and,
why would he spend the time there as opposed to extending more of the specific things you said on case? Like, applying this highly generic theory to say that they don't solve versus the case cards you read that said that,
Yeah. Well, especially even your really good case-specific defense, like, I mean, you have South China Sea answers and some of those kind of things which are better than your realism takeout for the impacts that are on their case.
Okay, yeah.